Hey folks, welcome back to Only Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about my favorite series of the year so far. This is the second part in the two-part video series I typically do every year, where I talk about my favorite books and series. I'll have my favorite books list, the link to the video with my favorite books listed down below. Anyway, number 10, Alex Feby's Cities of the Weft. This is a series that starts off as a Gormenghast inspired fancy, low fantasy kind of trilogy, and it becomes so much more. Like, in terms of the scale, the scope, everything, it just explodes by the end of the third book. We initially follow Nathan Treves, who is just child that's just sunk deep into the depths of poverty, and the way that he scrounges for a living, and how he eventually becomes embroiled in the schemes of the Master of Mordew, and what happens as a result of all of that. The books, like, they're very much like Gormenghast, they have almost like a weird Dickensian feel to them. And in terms of the imagination and that kind of thing, it's very different. It's very the world. These worlds, these cities feel very grungy, dark, kind of miserable. Kind of they have that miserable kind of feel to them. But the world building doesn't just stop at the imagination doesn't just stop at the world building, that kind of thing. Like, Alex Feby is a very talented writer, and he does a good job of characterization. He does plotting, these kind of things. He goes off in some very strange tangents, which really fit these very strange books. But where he gets really creative in terms of his imagination, that kind of thing, is that these books get very meta. Some of the ways that he writes things, that he narrates things, that he presents things to read. He plays with that perception, the perception of the reader as they read the book at different points in these kind of things. It gets really crazy, really fun, really entertaining in that regard. As for the story itself, it's spectacular. It's very much a fantasy inspired series, and it does get very fantastical by the end. Like, if you're into different fantasy, this is definitely something, a trilogy to look at. There is one character in here who is probably a standard character for me for the year. I don't want to talk about him because he is going to be a fan favorite for anyone who reads this book. I think you have no soul if you read these books and you don't like this particular character, Anaximander. Anyway, so that's my number 10 pick of my favorite series of the year so far. At number 9, what do I have? At number 9, I have Ellen Kushner's Riverside. And this is a trilogy of novellas, loosely interconnected, set within the wider world of Riverside. It's almost like a shared world. It was started by Ellen Kushner, I believe, but she's invited so many different authors and writers and creators to contribute to it at this point. Like, you'll find a myriad of short stories and these kind of things. Like, even the trilogy of novellas that I read, the first two were written by Ellen Kushner, and the last one is a collaboration between Ellen Kushner and Delia Sherman. So these books, like, they've been described as fantasy of manners, that kind of thing, and they have a very strong LGBTQ component. They all feature romances as a major subplot, and none of the all three of them are queer in that regard. But anyway, like, these books, they follow we follow different characters in the town of Riverside, and Riverside is just this. Think of this medieval aristocratic setting, almost like Enlightenment age kind of thing, where you have nobles be nobles. They're entitled. They're out for whatever they can get. They're greedy. They're venal beings, that kind of thing. And they're politicking, they're scheming, that sort of stuff. What sets Riverside apart is that there's a law where if you have grievance with someone, you can hire a swordsman to challenge them to seek redress and that kind of thing. So that's where the first book kind of introduced that we step into this world with Swords Point, where we follow one of the best swordsmen at the time of that novel, and the challenge he gets embroiled in as a result of a commission that he's forced to take, and then the second book we get a time skip where we follow a side character from the first book. Like these books are loosely connected standalones essentially. The third book is set almost 60 years after the first one, with entirely new characters doing a completely different thing on its own. Like, I have individual reviews for. I will have individual reviews for these three books, so you can check those out whenever. But, like, these books are really cool. Like, Ellen Krishnan, I went into this knowing she was a really good writer, because I have read stuff from her before. And she does just a brilliant job of writing these novels. They're by nature very character driven. Like I said, this is dubbed as Fantasy of Madness, so it's all about the character relationships, the drama, the dialogue, and these kind of things. They're very dialogue focused books, and that there's not so much a story that's narrated to you, and that kind of thing. How I took some advice from some folks, and I actually did these on audiobook. They're part of the Neil Gaiman Presents collection. So just a heads up, if you I actually recommend you to go in that route, because they have like sound effects and these kind of things. It was a really good experience, but obviously if you're unaware of what's going on with Neil Gaiman, feel free to skip them and just read the physical books or the ebooks. But their stories not to be missed. They're really cool, really entertaining stories. Like, I had a blast with all three of them. They get very intense, they get very emotional. Like I said, these are very deeply character driven stories. It's all about the characters, it's all about the drama, it's all about the dialogue, that kind of stuff. And they all have all have some very compelling stories that they tell. Highly worth checking out. At number 8, I have a series that I've only read the first book so far, but I can already tell it's going to be one of my favorite series of the year, and that's KJ Parker's Engineer Trilogy. I've only read the first book in this so far, Devices and Desires, and in this one we get almost an upgrade. To me, it read almost like an upgrade to his Fencer trilogy, where we have the same sort of setup, but we have a main character, we'll call him Ziani, who is an engineer in this perpetual republic, and they're all about specification, they're all about exactitude, they're all about you perfection essentially, and you have to you're not allowed to deviate, and Ziani deviates, very minor deviations, but because of that he's sentenced to death, and he escapes, and this book is all about what happens after he escapes. In addition to that, there's also a couple subplots going with a conflict between two mountain nations, and then some also human drama that's happening between some of the characters in those mountain nations. And this book is essentially how what happens after Ziani escapes the Byzantine Republic, and how he goes about deciding to air his grievance, shall we say, with the way that he was treated by his homeland. So a really cool book, a really entertaining one. This series has been on my TBR at least since 2008. It's 2025. It's high time I got to it. Okay, so yeah, I finally got to the first book, and I'm definitely going to be diving into the second and third before much longer. But just off the first book, I can tell it's I am going to have a blast with this one, because it has everything that I love about a KJ Parker story in it. And with the way that it ends and what's set up for the second book, I can already tell things are going to get very interesting very fast. Anyway, so that's my number 8 pick, KJ Parker's Engineer Trilogy. At number 7, I have another series I've only read one book from so far, and that's Ari Salvatore's Icewind Trilogy. In terms of publication order, the first trilogy featuring Drist. And the Crystal Shard was just fun. It was just a really fun read. It was a fun introduction to the character, and his band of merry individuals, I guess, who will be following for the scope for at least these 3 novels. And this one in particular, we find Drist at Icewind Dale around the same time when a wizard gets his hands on a magical artifact and decides that he wants to set himself up as a tyrant. And this book is all about the conflict between this would-be tyrant and the tongues. But even before that, we also have the conflict within the tongues and their barbarian neighbors and these kind of things. Like, this book is just action-packed. There's quite a lot of battles, there's quite a lot of conflict, and that kind of stuff. At the same time, they have that very much action adventure feel to them. Like there's some really fun stuff that happens in here. It serves as a really good introduction to the characters. We get some moments that at the end of the day, like this is very classic kind of 80s D&D inspired kind of fantasy, so it does have those kind of elements to it. But it was really fun. Like our Salvatore is just he has something in terms of how he writes and stuff. I can really only describe it as very readable. Like these read fast, these read fun. They flow very smoothly, and that's why the Crystal Shard was just so fun to read. So I'm looking forward to reading the next 2 books in this trilogy at least before much longer. But anyway, that's my number 7 pick. R. Salvatore's Icewind Dale trilogy. At number 6, I have David Gemmell's Troy series, and this is a trilogy of novels where he gives us his version of I think it would be the Iliad. Anyway, the Trojan War, whichever Greek epic that is. Yeah, but of course this is David Gemmell. He has his own fun take on things, and what we get here is just. It's not so much a story of the Trojan War as it is the events leading into the Trojan War. And we just get, like, if you've read David Gemmell before, you know exactly what to expect with this series. Like, some brilliant characterization, some epic moments, incredible tension, a really fast-paced and engaging story. Characters who, they are very much tropes, as it starts off, but they're just so much more. Like David Gemmell had a gift for like writing characters in such a way that they're compelling to read, and their interactions are even more compelling. Like these books have a romantic subplot through all 3 of them, and they don't slow you down in the bit. They add to the story. They contribute to it. That being said, like these books are just packed with conflict and intensity and action. There's venal characters, there's heroic characters, there's scumbag characters. There's ones we sympathize with, ones we want to see kicked in the teeth, all of that. It's all here. A very human drama that plays out in these pages, as much as it has the occasional fantastical element to it. And of course, this is David Gemmell. He gives us a very different take on it. And how he does is a really cool way. He introduces Odysseus, who I believe is the person who writes the epic in the real world or whatever. And he introduces him as a well-known master storyteller, a teller of tall tales. So you could never really trust what Odysseus says. He's a flagrant liar and embellisher. So you can never really trust what he says, and as a result of that, when we get the story, it gives him the license to be a little more creative with what he does here, as with how he portrays these events. So that made it really fun, and like I said, these books are just, in typical David Gemmell fashion, these books are just fun, action-packed reads. It was a bit bittersweet to read them because the final book is the book that he was working on when he passed, and it was completed by his wife. Oddly enough, I think I enjoyed the 3rd one the most out of all of them. Like I don't know if that's Stella Gemmell's influence or just the combination of everything that came so far. Because one thing about David Gemmell is that he has a thing with endings. He likes to give you an ending that you're unprepared for, and we very much get that with this ending. Like he uses a subplot in such a way with the side character that you barely think about, in such a really fun way that it's a really cool series. Okay, a really cool trilogy, highly worth recommending. Especially if you've actually never read David Gemmell before, this is a good introduction to his work and see why he's so beloved. Anyway, that's my number 6 pick. At number 5, I have Shannon Maguire's October Day series, and so far I've read the first 6 books in this, and this is your standard kind of urban fantasy, action adventure, mystery kind of pulp thing. But Shannon Maguire is a really cool writer. Is a really good writer, and as a result of that, like these books have so much more to lend to them. Like October Day is a half fae. She's part of the fairy realm essentially. Like the magical components of these books come come from the fairy realm, essentially, and the creativity, imagination that she leverages to pull that off it sticks true to traditional interpretations of fairy, while she gets to do her own. She does some very creative things with it by expanding it and making it her own thing. And these books are very short, they're action packed, they're fast paced, the typical urban fantasy pulp adventure kind of thing, but she packs so much into these stories. It's incredible. Like, there's so many threads and nuggets in each book. It introduces or it plays on or it ties up so many of these different threads and seeds that she plants along the way, that there's just so much story that's told in each individual book. Like, just off the first book, reading it, you can already tell just the way that this world, this character is conceptualized and everything. You can just tell that she has tons of stories she can tell in there. And the cool thing is that she doesn't waste time with all of it. Like I said, I'm 6 books in, which is about a third of the series. There's about 18 books out so far, and the things that she gets up to in the series so far already, the threads that she plays with, are things that I didn't expect to see until much later already. So she doesn't leave you hanging for very long, which is really fun. But so far, these have just been a really enjoyable experience. Like, Toby is a very fun character to follow. She, the world is really cool. She has a very fun cast of side characters that that accompany her on her adventures. It's just a really fun series. In terms of like the urban fantasy that I've read, it's definitely in my top 5, maybe top 3 so far. Even though I'm only 6 books in, hopefully that it keeps the trend roll going. But yeah, that's my number 5 pick, Shayna Maguire's October Day. At number 4, I have my Dark Horse series of this year, pun intended, or unintended anyway. Either way, it's Kristen Britton's Green Rider series. And honestly, this series I didn't. It's been on my TBR for a while. I kept saying I'll give it a shot at some point, but I never quite got around to it because just from the cover art and that kind of thing, it looks like a very classic fantasy kind of story. I never really knew anyone who had even read the series as much as liked it. But then last year I read Johnny Wirtz's Wars of Light and Shadow, another series that I've known about as long as this one, and that kind of made me decide I'll get to this at some point. And then Stacy from the Chapter Conundrum and Fina from Josephine Reads, they were planning a read along on the Bookish Drama Discord of this series, and I was like, okay, this is a sign that I need to read this series. I might as well just jump in and read this series, and it blew my mind. I wasn't prepared for what I encountered because this is it is very much a classic series, a classic inspired fantasy series, but it quickly becomes so much more. Like these are very character driven novels. They start off as you would expect, given the cover art, inspired by Lord of the Rings and to some extent, and inspired by Valdemar to some extent, but they just quickly become their own thing so much more. Like the main character, Carrigan, is just a really fun character to follow as we go through her adventures. I think so far I'm at least 4 or 5 books into this, by the way, and she just gets embroiled in this series of adventures that they escalate, they become so much more intense. There's quite a lot of character work. The heart and soul of these books is the character work. It's all character drama. It's mainly character drama that allows you that really hooks you and gets you going. That being said, there's quite a lot. These are very much books inspired by epic fantasy, so there is a otherworldly, larger than life threat. There's just so much crazy, fantastical stuff that's going on. It has it all. But most of all, it's like Robin Hood. As much as it happens within a fantasy world or whatever, it's the characters and the drama that you come back for. So these books have just been really fun to read. It's kind of sad that no more people aren't checking them out, but I'm very happy I picked up this series. Very, very happy I picked up this series almost on a whim, almost completely on a whim, you can see. Anyway, at number 3, I have Ian Triggelis's the Alchemy Wars, and this is a trilogy that I was aware of it when it was being published, but I never really checked it out. I never really got inspired to find out what it's about. And then Alan over the Library of Alexandria. He planned to read along of it for this year, and that finally prompted me to check out these books and see what they were about. And this is a really cool alternate history of a couple centuries back, colonial times, where it envisions a world where the Dutch Calvinist Empire, they have they got access to these, they develop these automatons, clackers, and that allows them to create this military economic dominance on a whole other level. And it basically allows them to dominate colonial times, and it ripples through to the present time, which is the early 1900s, which is where these books actually happen. By this point, the clackers have been integrated into every level of society, to the point where like no human labor is needed for anything. They're so ubiquitous that they're used for the most the most pointless of purposes, essentially. And these books in particular, they follow the conflict between the Dutch Calvinist Empire and the French, who are essentially the last remaining bastion of the old world powers, of the colonial powers. Everyone else has pretty much been dominated by the Netherlands or whatever. So because of that, like, certain things never happen. Like, for example, America doesn't exist because what needs to happen never happened, because the Dutch took power. Really cool stuff like that. Anyway, so these books are very much about the conflict between these two nations, and not just that, the uprising of the clackers and their bid for freedom from the Dutch. And these books are incredible. Like, it's surprising no more people don't talk about them. We have very much a story about revolution that happens. At the same time, we have a very compelling cast of characters who are incredibly fun to read. Like, some of the characters in here, they'll even if you despise them, by the end of this series, you will enjoy reading them. And like I said, Ian Triggers, he's a very smart guy. So just the sheer amount of thought that he puts into the world, and the way, not just the way that it's conceptualized, but the way it plays out, and the themes that he bakes into this world, and the story, and that sort of thing, it elevates it to a whole other level. Like, these books pack, I kind of think of it as like an economy of where it's like certain writers have an ability to take a set amount of word space and just pack so much story into them, so many ideas and concepts and themes and plot and story and events and all these things, and pack them into a very short word count. Ian Triggers is one of those writers, and what these books do, it's kind of breathtaking to sit back and think about it. The farther out you go from these books, so they're a very fun trilogy to read. Highly worth checking out. In the read along, it was a bunch of us who read it, and I don't think there was anyone who disliked these books. They're just so creative, they're just so interesting, they're just so engaging, and the characters are just so compelling for the most part. Like I said, even the ones that you dislike, the ones meant to be disliked, they're just really fun to read. So that's my number 3 pick, Ian Triggers' Alchemy Wars. At number 2, I have a series that I technically started last year, but I'd only read like 1 or 2 books, and so far it's been the majority of my reading, big series reading for this year. I've read about 7 more books. That's why I just felt like including it at number 2. Anyway, Johnny Wirtz's Wars of Light and Shadow. So this is the series making a big booktube buzz right now, with good reason. Like, it's incredible. Johnny Wirtz is an author who writes prose on a whole other level, and this conflict, these books essentially tell the conflict between two brothers with who have these, they have this, let's put it as, complicated family dynamic, but they essentially get cursed by they get placed on a gauge by the Misrate, and they're eventually forced into conflict. But what's really cool about it is that these can get very political. They can get very the way that they go about this conflict, it isn't straightforward. Like, for example, one of the brothers, he weaponizes religion and these kind of things against the against the other. It's a really cool story essentially, a really cool conflict. But what really elevates it to a whole other level is Johnny Wirtz's writing. There are some authors who they just write on a whole other level in terms of their prose. They're very unforgiving. They demand your attention. They demand your patience, because it's not just the story they tell, but it's the way that they choose to tell it. Like, for example, in this world, some words simply don't exist, and that's why you'll find her using within the world, within the context, even within the context of the narration, you'll find her using certain words to. You'll find her describing things in a way where one word would suffice, but that word doesn't exist in this world. So, because technology or whatever never developed to the point of that world. So it's a little touches like that, extrapolated to the extreme. Like Johnny Wirtz has a style all her own, and that's what sells these books. There are just some deeply character-driven stories. Everything about this conflict is examined and parsed and shredded before us, essentially in the minds of the characters as they become embroiled in these events. It's an interesting experience. In terms of, like, you hear people talk about reading difficulty of this series. It's not difficult. It just demands your attention, and it demands to be read carefully, because every word and every sentence is there for a reason to contribute something. So overall, it's been a really cool series, because in addition to all of that, like, Johnny Wirtz's creativity and her imagination doesn't just start and stop at the prose. She has very interesting ideas in terms of conflict and themes and ideas that she wants to portray. And like I said, I think I'm about 8. I'm on the 9th book now, and over the course of these stories, just the way that they handle the conflict, it's built on a whole other level. It's very unlike any other epic fantasy you're going to read, in all the best ways. If you can handle her style. If you can't handle her style, you're being warned. But yeah, that's my number 2 pick. Johnny Wirtz's Wars of Light and Shadow. And my number 1 pick, and a series that's going to be an all-new favorite series, which is funny, because I honestly thought I would not like this series, is Matt Dinniman's Dungeon Crawler Carl. So, I just had a blast this series. Like, I don't think I need to introduce it, so I'm not going to bother to introduce it. I'll just tell you what my experience was like reading it. And I did the first one in ebook. I liked it a lot. I really enjoyed the character dynamics between Carl and Donut. So I figured, okay, I'll take everyone's advice and do book 2 from audio. And the audio experience for these books takes it to a whole other level. The only way you should experience these books is via audio. Like, I was just completely hooked by book 2, and I ended up binging this series back to back and just listening every minute I could. I was just completely and utterly hooked, because it's a really fun series. The humor's on point. It, like, everyone sells it as this crazy lit RPG, whatever, but they don't talk about the fact that it just has so much more going on in terms of a story. Like, it looks at it doesn't shirk from diving into the horrible human cost of what exactly the situation caused. There are moments when the characters finally get to slow down, are really comprehend, and their mind slowly starts to comprehend that this is the end of the world for them. So it can get very horrific in terms of, like, the human drama. It goes to some very messed up places. There is an overarching theme of anarchy and rebellion that we all love. These kind of things, like, it has a lot more meat to it than you would think from the way that people talk about the series, and that's what hooked me. That's what hooked me. In addition to the absolutely, utterly compelling and engaging relationship between Carl and Donut. Like, those two are the heart and soul of this series. It would not work without them. It would be a fun series. It'd be good, okay, sure, but without their character dynamic, this series would not be as popular as it is. And I can say that because after reading it, I know for sure at this point Lit RPG is almost definitely not for me. There's probably going to be 1 and 2 series that resonate with me, sure, but as a whole, not. It's not a genre that I'm going to be super interested in reading a lot of, but it's just their dynamic that really pulls this off, that really makes this as special and engaging as it is for everyone. That being said, at the end of the day, it is very much an RPG, so if those elements don't work for you, then don't push it. But for me, I just had a blast with it. I was just completely hooked when I started the audiobook because of Jeff Hayes' incredible performance. And yeah, I'm fully on this bandwagon. I'm all caught up to book 7, and like everyone else, I'm waiting for book 8 to drop. So yeah, that's my number 1 series. Like, that series is so addictive. I finished it maybe 2 weeks past, and I was already itching to just go and read it again. I'm literally waiting right now for my sister to pick it up, and I'll probably reread it with her when she does, just so we can chat about it. She finally experiences, like since I've read it, I've been telling her almost every day, read it. So yeah, really fun series. It absolutely deserves all the hype and praise it's been getting, and at least the first book is worth checking out. And much like Ellen Kushner's Riverside, audio is the best way to go with this one. But yeah, that's my favorite series of the year so far. This is absolutely going to change because I do have quite a few other series I want to get to before much longer. So yeah, if you made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.